So why would you build roads if you don't need them? If you have electric taxis or drones that transport things around. There is no reason why you would put in infrastructure that you may not require. One of the projects I'm working on is a flying car. So it's a very interesting designer coming out of Singapore. He's been working on this for maybe a decade and a half, maybe up to 2 decades now.
Back on the Modular Podcast, we have Laurence Barrett from Barrett Aerospace. They are a unique, innovative aerospace design firm based out of Singapore. I'm very happy to have Laurence today because I want to learn more about what Barrett Aerospace does and how they help the world as far as global warming and a lot of things. So thanks for coming, Laurence.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just tell us, what is Barrett Aerospace for those who don't know you?
Well, we're a very young company for starters. We're not a very big company either, but I would like to say we pack a bit of a punch when it comes to aircraft design. We've been involved in some significant programs up till now. There's an aircraft called Alice, which was created by Aviation. Back in 2018, we developed and designed and tested, assembled the whole tail assembly or empennage for that aircraft. We did it within 10 months. Quite an achievement for a small team. But to do that, we had to work with global collaborators. And as you can imagine, within 10 months, you're working at breakneck speed, so day and night to get things done. I think if we take the sort of DNA of what that is, it means that you're relying on people to do multiple roles. And sometimes you're having to make decisions on the fly. And that's where you need some experience in the people that you hire and the people that you use so that those decisions are the right ones. So quite a challenging enterprise to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say to anyone is that, aerospace is an exciting place to be, especially now. We're going into an era where new aircraft are being designed from scratch. They're flying car designs. There are various of helicopters that are electrified. There's other aircraft which are using older technology like autogyros. I mean, for some of the viewers, they'll know what I'm talking about. And it's not just about Airbus and Boeing anymore. And that's where we sit. We sit in this other category of aircraft design.
So can you take us through the process? The client, who's your typical client? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And what does that initial client meeting look like?
Yes. So I would like to say we have a regular sort of client, but we don't. We have people who are entrepreneurs, pretty much like myself or like how we design ourselves to be, who have something in their head and they say, can you help me to build this or make this? And then we set about thinking of how we would do that in the real world, something that's certifiable, something that will be able to fly and go through a full certification journey. As well as we have more, I would say, mature companies or people who've been in aerospace and recognize us for what we've done in the past up to now and say, okay, we like what you've done on this aircraft there. Can you do the same for us? So typically we get involved in things like structures of aircraft to make sure that the integrity holds through all the areas of flight that you expect it to be in. And we do it on I would say, data-oriented level. So a lot of what we do now, it's semi-portable computing power. So you have programming simulations that you can do, analysis you can do. And this is probably the beautiful thing about aerospace now, is that you can do that anywhere in the world, much in the same way that you have people who can work anywhere in the world remotely. So you can have a station and you're doing your aircraft design in Bali or in India or something like that. And it's just the same way, it's just as valid as it has ever been. So our customers tend to be new aircraft designers, and they tend to be what we call in the industry disruptive type vehicles or disruptive type technology for transport, future transport. So air taxis, drones, that sort of thing. So it's a very, very, you just have to look in the news. It's a very exciting time to be doing that sort of thing. And encourage any of your viewers who haven't been involved in anything to do with new transport in the aviation sector to have a look at stuff like this. Yeah.
So can you take us back to your story and your background, and how did you get involved in this?
So it is a long story. So I hope I'm not showing my age too much, but I was I was an 80s child, and back in the day we had aircraft that we used to build out of balsa wood and tissue paper, and a lot of them were these rubber band aircraft. And I think from the age of 6 or 7, I was building these aircraft. And then from the age of about 8 or 9, my dad would bring me to air shows, like the Farnborough Air Show in England. And that's what really captivated me as a, into aircraft and aviation. And I think when I came to school, I thought, well, what am I going to do? And my dad brought home a newspaper clipping. What he showed me a job that was going at the time, East Midlands Airport. They had a maintenance department, and they wanted a summer intern. So one summer I went there, and I thought at the end of that, I really enjoyed it. This is what I want to do. And then set about getting a degree, because at the end of the day, you need to have certain skills. You need to be capable, and you need to have the right type of mindset when it comes to aircraft. And then that's what eventually led me to work for various other multinational companies, such as Thales, such as GE Aviation. And then realizing at some point when I know that's when I was hitting about 40, that I wanted to do it on my own. I think, that's the point where you think, I've got enough energy to do it. I've got skills that I've built up. Now is the time to convert that into something meaningful for myself, and maybe direct it in a way that no one else is thinking of going with it. So as I've discussed with you, this thing about going into drones, electric aircraft, that type of thing, I think these are areas that really need a different viewpoint and maybe a different approach. So everything that I've done so far is about getting that business to work, in that direction. Yeah.
So in the last 10 years, we've seen the emergence of EVs, e-bikes, and like Tesla, and now the Chinese vehicles.
Yes.
So, and a lot of our clients are these EV companies, but we haven't heard much of electric airplanes. What's happening there? Will we see that come in the near future?
Well, yes, there are a few contenders on the market right now. We're speaking from the UK, so I think the number one contender at the moment is a company called Vertical, based in Bristol. They are pioneering effectively a eVTOL, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which is electric. And the nearest I would describe it to is a modern day equivalent of a helicopter. You mentioned electric propulsion. Is this going to be a thing of the future? Well, if you look at examples like that, they believe so. And I think the investors also believe so. So the investments are coming in to these areas. Now, there's a lot to be proven. I think the problem is not, although safety is always always a challenge with any aircraft, it's things like duration of flights and sort of expected, distances you can travel, these type of things. And also payload, how many passengers can you carry if you're carrying all these other batteries with you? There is talk that, another seismic shift of battery technology is on its way. And if that happens, then it makes it a lot easier because you don't have to carry that much in battery weight. But until then, even as it stands now, there is a case being made that this is viable. So the people I work with and the industry that I'm within, the question isn't about if it's going to happen. It's more about when, and a little bit to a certain extent how. A lot of people would think of this like a VHS Betamax, if you remember the old video cassettes. It's that type of thing. The standard isn't quite in place yet. Is it going to define itself from Europe? Is it going to define itself from America or something like that? But everyone agrees I speak to that it is going to happen.
Yeah, that's exciting. And it's just because we haven't seen innovation in commercial flight, I think, for the generations, for decades. And it's probably gonna happen in the near future if it's if it's gonna happen. I'm guessing.
We are due for some change, or at
Yeah.
least evolution. I mean, whether it's the first strong thing to say is a revolution. Are we going to not use airports anymore? Are we going to fly point to point? So that's a big contentious point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take how the Romans traveled, 2,000 years ago, they believed a point to point straight line distance was the best way to go. So you wouldn't sort of deviate via another hub to go somewhere else. So I think we have to resolve a few of those type of logistical problems, but I think it will be solved.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly in parts of the world where it's more developing than developed.
Right.
So where the infrastructure doesn't exist yet. So if you don't have roads or rail, and you have areas that are effectively forested areas, you may never have to put roads in them at all. So one that I'm aware of is in Indonesia. So I'm currently, my company's based in Singapore. We're in Southeast Asia. It's for a reason. A lot of those areas of the world are going to be developed, in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And there's a good case to be made that for the capital of Indonesia, for example, the new one, it's going to be a garden city, a green city. So why would you build roads if you don't need them? If you have electric taxis or drones that transport things around. So, there is no reason why you would put in infrastructure that you may not require.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the driver. Maybe those are the areas, those developing countries and regions will be the areas that would promote and encourage and sort of ultimately use this type of new technology and transport before anywhere else. And the other example I would give is archipelago nations like Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
So Indonesia and the Philippines are thousands of islands in one country, all interconnected currently by some roads and ships and boats. If you now have a point-to-point network that's connected via air taxis and drone delivery systems, then you don't ever need to build roads anymore. And the convenience has gone up. So your travel times from A to B have gone from maybe half a day to half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's been to Bali knows that you can travel a distance of maybe 1 kilometer and it might take 45 minutes just because the infrastructure there is just can't sustain the tourism.
That's right. And that's a good point as well, that, if we do want to enjoy yet preserve some of these parts of the world, which was the reason we go there. I mean, you mentioned Bali, one of them. Why would you put 2 or 3 lane highways through the whole country?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the cost of development, as an aerospace engineer, I'd argue, could we not use this as the case model for air taxis and air transport, which by that time would be, you'd see a lot more options on the market, and it'll be a clean form of transport. So, you're not only are you not building any roads and having to destroy forest, but you are using the green, very environmentally friendly form of transport. So I think we have a good future going forward in the world. And as I said, possibly in other parts of, or developing parts of the world, and I haven't even mentioned Africa yet, or South America, but these are areas where you don't also have the infrastructure problems that you might have in, say, the UK, where you have roads, cities, and all these things to overcome with air taxi travel. You're trying to fly things through cities or towns in potential conflict with people who are there. They're not going to want to have noisy sort of drones flying above their heads. Whereas in the middle of, Saharan desert or somewhere like that, or the Middle East, which is the other area that's really active in these technologies, that's where you'll find a lot of these transport systems might come first.
So, can you share some of the interesting projects you've been working on? I heard drones, air taxis. It sounds like it's pretty radical stuff. It's not your typical, Boeing A33, A330 or something.
Yeah, yeah. So nope, it's not the normal trajectory of aircraft design. In many respects, it's smaller. I would say, it requires a bit more agility in how you do things. But one of the projects I'm working on, and I have been allowed to say this, is it's a electric. So it's a not electric. It's a flying car
Fine.
example that I'm working on at the moment. Yeah, so it's a very interesting designer coming out of Singapore, and he's been working on this for maybe a decade and a half, maybe up to 2 decades now. Um, he has been looking at it from the powertrain side of things and how you would switch from a conventional road vehicle into something that flies. So his concept is quite unique. It's a car. It's a car 98% of the time, but it can fly. So 2% of the time, it can convert into flying mode, if you like. So a lot of those out there who sort of think of Back to the Future might think of the DeLorean that flies.
Yeah.
So this was some of the inspiration he told me into that. So it's a company called Unlimited Design Works, and they have been developing this concept. Last year in July, we brought a flying demonstrator to Farnborough Airshow, and it was a fully functional flying demonstrator at the airshow. And that's where we got the initial feedback that yes, this should be brought. I mean, you scale things up at this level as well. You start with a small model and you make that work, proof of concept, and then you build it up and up until you get to the full scale vehicle.
What?
Yeah.
Can we just backtrack a bit?
Mm.
How does it fly 2% of the time?
Yeah. So I think where that design or that need came from was in the area of disaster relief in particular. So you may have a landslide in a remote part of the world, and that landslide is blocking vehicle access to overcome that where that landslide is. So what you might have to do is to drive up to that point, fly up and over it, and onto the other side, and there you are. You reach the point of disaster. And for disaster relief as well, electric vehicles in particular, because they have a power source, sometimes it can be the only power source available to that area. So although the power can be down and energy can be, you can't plug in into anywhere. So here's the chance for life-saving medical equipment to be plugged into this vehicle as well. So not only can it retrieve and bring those people out to hospital, it can also supply power on the ground as a first responder type scenario. So a lot of this company in particular has been looking at that type of user case for this vehicle. But like I said, it's a car with a steering wheel most of the time. His other little reason, say his name is Sam. His other reason for doing this is because he wants to avoid traffic.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure if you've ever been stuck in a long traffic jam, you'd like to just get up and fly off in another direction. So that's where the inspiration came from for that. So.
Wow.
Mm.
So I'm hearing things coming from smart people who are trying to predict the future. And one of the things I've heard from Naval Ravikant is he says the future of warfare is drones. And it's going to be one country's drones versus another country's drones. And no one's going to get killed. And then whoever, breaches through wins the battle. Where are you on this whole drone thing? And we're also seeing it in the news every single day in Ukraine. What's your take?
So I think when I started my journey of aircraft design, I was looking at just the future of transport of people, and going to inaccessible areas where it's currently difficult to do so. And now you've mentioned what's happening in Ukraine and places like that. It is dictating a lot of what drones are being looked at in terms of what they seem to be very good at doing. My view on that is that there is always a negative side of what a technology or a new vehicle or sector even can go down towards. Personally, I do avoid that. Um, if anything, I would stipulate that for me, I draw the line at things like search and rescue, where you're for humanitarian reasons, you are reaching someone who needs help, or you are finding someone who is lost in the middle of a forest and you're using infrared cameras to detect where they are. Or you are supplying much needed food or medical equipment or medicines to an area that's had an earthquake for disaster relief or something like that. That's where I would sort of draw the line. However, you know, it's it would be foolish to say that the technologies aren't similar, because they are very similar. And then the question would be, do we not do one or the other at all?
Mm-hmm.
You know, progress is always going to have a dark side and a light side. And I would say that, yes, I'm tending towards for the good of people, for the of our future and our kids. But, there's always that reason why you might want to do something else. I can categorically say Barrett Aerospace, we prefer to be on the civil side of this sort of technology at the moment. And that's where I think we've made our most progress as well.
What about like Amazon's delivery drones and things I've been seeing? I haven't seen anything come out in the States where Amazon is flying packages around. But do you see that as coming in the near future?
Yes. Okay. So we've done it. Our company has done it. So back into 2020, Barrett Aerospace, we applied for what they call an operator's permit to be able to fly deliveries. So in the past, we've been involved with shore to ship trials, sea trials. So at that time, it was deemed that the safe spot in Singapore was to take a parcel and deliver it to a ship over a bit of water, a bit of sea, and that would be very much, the risk was very low, and also it would be something that would compete well with the traditional means of getting a parcel from the shore to the ship, which is usually a small little boat, and how long that takes to organize, and the cost of that. So it was something that it could compete with there and then. So we did some of that work. So delivering parcels is something I am familiar with. Now, whether Amazon or these sort of companies will deploy this as a key part of or key strategy for their delivery mode, I think we're still going to wait to see the cost point reduce quite. So a drone is an expensive bit of kit at the moment, even now, and the type of systems that you put on board and everything. If something like that sort of fails or comes down, you have to think of all the consequences of it as well. So I think we have to get to a point where it's proven a lot more than what it is. And my feeling is that companies like Amazon are probably looking at other companies that are developing these systems and flying them with the view that maybe one day they'll just acquire it. So they themselves may not look to invest too much of their time and money and effort into these type of research, but then, wait till the smoke clears, wait to see who the front runner is, and then maybe that's the one that they acquire, and then that becomes the sort of delivery mode from there on. But going back to what I said at the beginning of the interview, that's why it's an exciting time for aerospace engineers, anyone who's looking at getting into something exciting, because there is change on the horizon. Yeah.
What kind of people are you looking for to join the Barrett Aerospace team?
Yeah, so we have done a lot of work with Brunel University in the UK. We continue to do our work with Brunel. And one of the things I look at is not just, obviously we have taken on one or two placement engineers from there. Usually at once a year, we might take up to two. And then, but now I'm looking at other faculties of the different schools there. So there are design schools. There are ways that you can look at your the aesthetics in what you're designing, not just the structural or the functional part of it. And this is where you probably want someone with a more of an arts slant coming in. So yes, we are recruiting, and yes, we do look for people in specific areas, but certainly someone who can bring something different to the table, a little bit of imparting of their own sort of artistic flair, if you want to call it that. That's what we look for as well, because I think that if you look at any aircraft that's been built and been successful, I mean, I'm thinking of Concorde right now. You know, you look at it and you can see the design. It looks like it's going fast, staying still. That's what everyone says about it. And I would like to have that type of ethos in what we do. So therefore, people and young minds, expressive minds is something that we look for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so really fascinating stuff.
Mm.
I don't imagine there are too many companies like you. What are you looking to do with your company now? I heard something about expansion into London. What does the future look like for Barrett Aerospace?
Yeah. So after 10 years of operating in Singapore, and you know the sort of, you know, when we had the COVID sort of 2 or 3 year period where most of aviation stopped. So we were affected by that. So we had a few hiccups, but after all of that has settled, the plan now is to have another entity in the UK. Whether it's London or somewhere else, we are still looking at that. And the idea from that is that we would like to have the ability to explore how we developed an aircraft in regions like Indonesia and Singapore, and have some of the specialities within the UK assisting on that development as well. So I'm not forgetting the fact that, you know, the UK has a very, very rich aerospace design, very credible history. And this is something that we would like to bring on board and be able to then impart it to other parts of the world where, you know, that's where the design might be used. As I mentioned earlier, you know, an aircraft like what we're designing may first fly in somewhere like Indonesia or for the Philippines or Australia or something like that sooner than it would in the UK. But we need to build into all the needs of what that aircraft will require, and also to certify it in region as well. So we haven't talked about that yet, but you know, if you want to fly an aircraft in a certain region, it has to be certified in that region. So there's a whole and I use the word journey that needs to be built into any aircraft that you design, because that's how you will then progress and be successful. So yeah, I look forward to doing a bit more work in the UK going forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. I know, for example, Dyson is based in Singapore. So I do know there's very high level manufacturing in that part of the world, in Singapore specifically. So I think it makes sense that you're over there. It sounds like it makes sense. That's might be one of the reasons why you're based in Singapore, is it?
It is. So back in, I think it's 2008, roughly around the time of the world crisis, Singapore had a vision then to create a aviation cluster, aviation and aerospace cluster. And where we moved to eventually was right in the heart of that. And what they did was they converted what was at the time a British RAF base into a commercial aerospace hub, where the likes of Rolls-Royce, Airbus, Pratt& and Whitney would all converge within a 1 kilometer sort of radius of that. So it was no, you know, I saw that this was being built back in 2008, but by 2012, 13, when I was looking at where do I set up a company, I thought, well, that's where I'm going to go. And that is where I eventually did go. So it allowed me to then, as a startup, be right in the middle and amongst some of the biggest players in the world. Within 2 years from moving in, so about 2018, because of the work we had done on with companies like Aviation on the Alice aircraft, we were invited to join the trade organization in Singapore. So, that was no mean feat because you had to prove that you were capable in aerospace and aerospace design and development, which we'd done. So that then opens other doors because then you're now talking to VPs of Airbus and Boeing who, where would that opportunity exist if it wasn't for that? So absolutely right. Singapore is and remains strategically aligned area of the Southeast Asian region that wants to maintain a good, healthy presence in aviation, and in particular repair and overhaul. That's where I think they focus now. But our business is a little bit more on aircraft design, so it's at the front end. But
Cool. Well, look forward to learning more about this expansion plan here in London. There's so much going on here, and it's like, yeah, you have to be here at a certain point. So, thanks for coming on and chatting.
Yeah.
And really interesting stuff.
I really appreciate your time, and if my closing message is to all the young people, you younger listeners out there, is please stick with or consider engineering as a subject, engineering as a career path. It does get exciting. You do travel the world. You can see a lot of the world, and it's not the sort of dirty working in a workshop grinding. It's not that anymore. It's an office environment. It's you mentioned Bali. I know people who design engineers who do their work in Bali and work remotely. So do consider that as a career path, and obviously maths, science, those are the subjects that you're going to need.